Hi everybody, I'm Tim from troutandfeather.com, and in this fly tying tutorial we are going to talk about the perfect jig nymph. I mean seriously, can you get any better than that? Stay tuned. We're going to be tying a fly today that we call the perfect jig nymph. Doesn't look too complicated, but trust me, there are some definite techniques inside of this one that will help you become a better tyer and hopefully get you to your next level of fly tying. Killer pattern, great one to fish with. We'll talk about that after the tying, but now let's get a clean hook in the vise and begin. So the perfect jig nymph. I am really setting myself up for this one. The vise is a Stonfo Cayman, one of my favorites, and the hook is definitely another one. It's the Hanak Competition H450BL. That BL designation stands for barbless. I'm tying this in a size 16, easily my favorite size, and I prefer to tie this one from a size 14 down to a size 20. The bead is a slotted tungsten bead. The color is silver. It's a 2.5 millimeter, and you can kind of bring that up to a 3 millimeter if you'd like a little bit more weight. You can also pair two beads together. You can also put a little bit of lead wire behind that bead. Basically, whatever really suits your needs. I prefer to keep it just a single bead, just to give it a little bit more lifelike movement in the water. And also keep in mind with these jig nymphs, with a jig hook, when you have it paired with the appropriate slotted tungsten bead, they tend to ride hook point up in the water, hopefully fewer snags. For our thread, I'm going to be using some Semperfli 18-aught waxed. This is the color pink, really nice hotspot color, not too over the top, which is kind of a perk of this one. The bobbin is a Stonfo Bob Tech, and I'm just going to build a little thread dam behind that bead. Basically, I'll keep wrapping until that bead will stop moving, and then my thread will just slowly be pushed down that little ramp towards the bend of the hook. Once it's there, I'll just pull away the tag end. And now let's start with our tailing fibers. I'm going to be using some Coq de Leon. I feature this in so many of my videos. I love this stuff for dry flies, nymphs. I mean, it's just a great tailing fiber. It's very resilient. My favorite color is medium pardo. And I basically want it to be as long as the shank, so somewhere around there. Get a little pinch wrap, place two wraps, kind of see where it's going to be. If it tends to be a little bit long, which I tend to make mine longer than shorter, I can just pull on those butt fibers just a hair if I want, bring them back to size. So kind of that recommendation whenever you're tying in your tailing fibers, it's okay if you go a little bit longer or a little bit shorter. If you only place a couple wraps in, you're able to then adjust them accordingly. Next, my tip is going to be I'm going to grab onto those fibers and kind of pull them onto my side of the hook. So I'm basically taking that top part and I'm just pulling it my way as I wrap. I'm just leaning them there, because as my thread goes around the shank, as it goes towards the camera, it will then just naturally kind of get those to line up and go straight down the shank. Now, if you look at the very end, you'll see mine are kind of slanted down, and I've started to adjust my tying to kind of encourage them to do that. Now, the argument might be, and if I just stopped right now and asked the question, why am I doing that? A lot of people might say, well, it's going to ride hook point up and you kind of want those slanting down, so whenever this hook is inverted, they're going to kind of be seen. And though that sounds great, what I really prefer to do at this point now is lift them up and take my thread under them and bring it back around the other side. And now if you look at them, they're a little bit more splayed, much more like natural nymphs. Now, do I think the fish are going to see that and that's going to absolutely mean all the difference? I don't know. But this is what I've been doing recently throughout the year 2020. And I encourage you to try doing that as well, because it's just one slight little move there. I'm going to grab my scissors, trim away the butt ends. These are new scissors I'm using in this video for the first time. This is called the Fly Tyers Supercut from Renowned. I've been using these for a while. I have not featured them yet, and now you are starting to see them. I have a review video coming out on those in the near future. All right, well now let's kind of get to the name. I call this the perfect jig nymph, and here's why. We're going to be tying the body with something called a Semperfli Perfect Quill. Now this is size small, which is intended for around sizes 16 to a 22, though I think you can get away with just buying the size small and going larger as well. And if you take a look at this sheet, it's basically a bunch of synthetic quills. These are super nice because they're already there for you. They're made out of plastic. They won't tear. I mean, if you pull them hard enough, sure they will. And one side of them has adhesive, so it will kind of stick to the shank of the hook, which is a really great thing. Now, keep in mind, because they're clear, whatever color thread you're using is going to show through. Now, if you want to go for something a little bit more natural, maybe go with an olive, a brown, or a black. Or if you like hot spot colors, go with a high-vis orange, high-vis chartreuse. In this case, I'm going with a pink. And you're going to see that it's going to be a really nice, subtle pink. Now, here are a couple things that I will point out regarding these perfect quills. They taper, so they start very narrow, and they get to a little bit of a wider section. You'll see that's adhered to my thumb. And because of that, if I would just tie in the very tip right now, the first 3 or 4 wraps are going to be extremely dark because you have that dark line going in, very similar to a quill, but there's not a lot of the clear up by the tip. So the first thing that I do, I go up about 1 inch, and I just trim some away. So I've just removed the first inch of it. Now I'm going to take this perfect quill, I'm going to set it on top of the shank, and I'm going to have the adhesive side up. I'm going to place a wrap to kind of lock it in place. Now I'm just going to wind forward, nearly touching wraps. You could probably get away with using a heavier thread than 18-aught, but I really just love the 18 and 12-aught series. Now I'm going to wrap back because I want to just really start to firm up any of those gaps because I want this pink showing through in those clear sections. So I've wrapped back, and now I'm just going to wrap forward one more time. This is going to help with my taper. It's going to help with the coloration. As I get near the bead, now I can just wrap a little bit truly to help form that carrot taper. Wrap back up, and now you can see it, just a nice subtle pink body that's showing. The next step, really simple. I'm going to hold on to my quill. I don't need to hold hackle pliers or anything like that. I'm going to start wrapping it. So the sticky side is going to be adhering to the body. I'll just take my time, make sure I have appropriate spacing. Can you leave a significant gap? Absolutely, but you won't have that segmentation that we like. Once I get close to the bead, I'm going to place a couple wraps over it. One wrap in front, then I'm just going to kind of hold it down a little bit and pinch the thread directly over that. And what that will do is just allow that to sit flat against my body. Thus, if I would just trim it before I place that wrap, I'll show you what I mean. If I would trim it right here, it would kind of be sticking straight up and it would not appear super flush, and it might be seen through my thorax. Otherwise, by placing that wrap in front of it, I'm just going to encourage it to sit down. I'm going to take this remaining perfect quill and kind of set it off to the side. Now, if you take a peek at this one is definitely a little wider, so maybe I'll save this for a size 14. Will I really? Absolutely not. I'll be using this on the very next hook. But if you want yours to all look identical, then maybe you would use the tips for a certain size and then the butt ends of these perfect quills for another one. But by all means, experiment with those. You will really like them. I'm just going to wrap back a couple wraps just to lock that in place. And at this point, I could add my thorax. However, I really prefer to just add a little bit of resin just to truly make this kind of bulletproof. I'm going to grab some Solarez Bone Dry. Just going to get it really nice up by the bottle. Put a little bit over the top, back to the tail. A little bit on my side, and get a little bit on your side as well. I basically want everything to just look wet. No more than that. If I have any excess, I can take a little piece of paper and just dab it along the bottom. In this case, I don't. So I'm just going to grab my UV light. This is one from Solarez, and I'm simply going to apply it. And as I apply it, you're going to notice my hand's going to be shielding my face because I don't want any reflection of this UV light towards me. So I'm going to cure it for approximately 8 seconds. Somewhere around 8 to 10 seconds. That's kind of the number that I'm going for. I don't feel the need to allow these to cure in the light. All right, now on to the next step. We are going to add a thorax, and basically grab your favorite dubbing that you like to use. Try to think, keep in mind, are you going for a color that's going to really blend well? For instance, you can see on my Perfect quill, that pink is really just showing extremely nice through that transparent body. See if you can see it a little bit better with that in the background. I love that. So I'm going to go with the color that's going to blend well. But you can also go with a contrasting color. You can stick more natural, a dark color. I have the opportunity to use some of these Semperfli sparkle dubbings. These come in boxes. I have two boxes, box 1 and box 2. I know someone's going to message, which one should I get, box 1 or box 2? I don't know. I got them both. I use a lot of the colors. Box 1 has some colors like white. There's a dark olive. You can see a light olive. There's a black. There's a nice red. There's claret, which we're going to be using today. I use that one quite a bit. A dark peach, a burnt orange, and orange. There's some other colors in there. In box number 2, this one tends to have some brighter colors, such as sunburst yellow. It's the second one in. A fluorescent yellow, a dark blue, some purples. There's one called a shocking pink that I've played around with a bit. There's a candy pink that I've used a lot. A nice fiery brown as well. So I believe you should be able to get those individually. I'm going to go back to the claret color. I think it just blends nicely with this. And as I pull out some fibers, it's going to be tough for you to see them. I really just want a very small and almost delicate pinch of fibers. I don't want it an inch long for my dubbing noodle. We're talking like 3/4 of an inch, ½ inch at most. I want to just get in 1 or 2 really, really close wraps. There's one full wrap and just kind of like starting the second one. So I made a complete rotation there. And next we're going to add kind of the last material to make this perfect, and that's something that we all love. It's called CDC. You got a lot of options on how you want to put this in. You can use a dubbing loop. Really the sky's the limit. You can pull some fibers, tie it in simply as a wing over the hook. What I like to do is just tie it in by the tips. So I'm going to hold on to the tips, stroke the fibers away from the tips, just exposing a tie-in point. Once I have that tie-in point, place a few wraps over that. I'm just going to trim away the tip. Now this one's a little bit of a longer size compared to some other CDCs that I have, but if it can be tricky for you to kind of wrap them, I recommend grab your favorite hackle pliers. These are the Stonfo Pinza Elites. Grab onto the stem, and as I wind around, I'm going to fold the hackles back. So I'm just basically going to pull them back towards the rear of the hook. Just want to hold on to those fibers. And I just want to make one rotation. Truly less is more with CDC. Now as I completed that rotation, I'm going to hold my CDC kind of up in the air. I'm just going to push and wind my thread through. So I just need a couple wraps of that through. 1, 2. I'm going to pull my CDC back and get one wrap in front of it just to kind of get everything locked in place. Let's trim that away. I think some of those fibers are locked in there. Now it's starting to look kind of like a spider here, and we don't want it like that. So I'm just going to pull those fibers back. Let's get one more nice wrap in front. And then I'm going to return to my claret dubbing and just, again, grab just a slight pinch. See if I can show you this dubbing noodle. I mean, the thread is nearly showing through that. There's not much to that dubbing noodle. Then I slide it up my thread, pull back all those fibers, and just get that to really lock them in place so those CDC fibers are going towards the rear of the hook. Now, because I did that, I can add a little bit of super glue if I went to my thread. It's not going to truly affect those fibers because I have that dubbing in place in front of them. So I'm just going to take some Tyers Z-Ment, place it with the brush directly on my thread. Then I can go right to my whip finish and do my best to keep those wraps real tight against that, the dubbing and the bead. Because I used a little bit of super glue, I don't need to put as many whip finishes. If you still want to go with the traditional 5, you can. I tend to go 3 to 5 whenever I'm using super glue. Once I have all that stuff locked in place, I can pull down on my thread, get my scissors in there, and now I have finished the perfect jig nymph. I'll just kind of give you a peek at the bottom, going around, and the top. But there is a quick tie of the Perfect Jig Nymph. Let's change the camera angle and we'll talk a little bit more about this one. So I hope you can appreciate my play on words with the Perfect Jig Nymph relating right back to those Semperfli Perfect Quills. Now, I don't want to turn this into a Semperfli commercial. Full disclosure, I am an ambassador for Semperfli. I believe their company is headed in just a wonderful direction, and I encourage you to learn more about them. I have a link for them down below in the description. But those Perfect Quills, why do I like them so much? I mean, it's simple. They are very easy to work with. Whenever you wrap them, they stick to the hook. And what's great about them is they're clear. So basically, if you want to change colors, you just go with a different color thread. Or if you want to take the easy way out, just go with white and use a Sharpie on your thread as you're wrapping it. Very simple to work with. They take a UV resin very well. It just creates almost a bulletproof fly. So by all means, check those out. Now, does that mean that you can call me up or email me and I'm going to give you all of my natural quills or my Polish quills? Absolutely not. I love them too, and I still will use those on both dry flies and nymphs. However, if you're a beginning tyer, keep in mind that they're very delicate. They can be difficult to work with. They tear very easily, and there are some quills that you need to actually soak in water first. So just kind of do a little research with your quills before tying them. But do I love that natural segmentation either with the Perfect Quills or with natural quills? Yes, go with it. You should know a lot of the other features of this fly. The Coq de Leon tail. I mean, come on. I love that for dry flies, for nymphs. It's such a resilient fiber. And that medium pardo color, I mean, that is a fan favorite. Go with it if you don't already own it. Next, for the dubbing, I think I kind of mentioned my reasoning behind that color that I chose. It just paired so well with that thread that I used underneath the Perfect Quills. So by all means, go with some different color combinations and see what works for you. But by all means, try to kind of tuck those CDC fibers in between your two dubbings, because that will really help to just kind of keep those fibers moving towards the rear of the hook. And now let's kind of talk about that CDC. I mean, I would have never thought years ago that I'd be using them on a regular basis on nymphs, because they were such an expensive fiber that was just reserved for floating flies, those really delicate ones meant to be in the film to fool those finicky fish. Well, they still are fooling finicky fish because they're so delicate and they move just so fine in those water currents as they undulate down below. What do they represent? I mean, the easy answer is insect legs. You can also say as they encapsulate the fly going back, it could look like an emerger because they could kind of capture that air bubble in there as well. Do I know 100% what they do? No, but I do know that fish love them and you should be incorporating them on a regular basis too. The final component to consider is the hook. And do you have to stick with just a jig hook? No, not by any means. If you have a scud hook, use them. Standard nymph hook, use them. Whatever you feel comfortable with, by all means go with that. But know that that's also part of the selection process. So for instance, if I'm in a stream or a river and it's very shallow and it's known to snag a lot, I'm probably gonna go with the jig hook because I don't wanna use all these flies that I just recently tied. However, if I'm at a pond or a lake or another still water situation and I know it's really deep, but I'm only fishing, we'll say 8 feet from the surface, then I might go with another hook just to know that maybe it'll have a better possibility of landing the fish based on that selection. So by all means, kind of think about that with the fly's design and with your selection of it. And now fly fishing with this fly. I mean, there is no question, no doubt about it. I have jumped down that Euro nymph rabbit hole and I don't even see the other end yet because there are just so many facets of this game that I just love. So by all means, tight line with this fly. I prefer to fish it near the bottom of the water column. That's where I'd recommend you fishing it as well. Are there times where I'll fish it as a dropper higher up on my leader in a little bit shallower water? Occasionally, and if I'm doing that, I'm probably gonna be using it smaller sizes. We'll say a size 18 or a size 20, but the majority of the time that I'm fishing this one, it will be a single nymph, just running it on a Euro nymph style of leader, and I'll be fishing it through riffles, through currents, not necessarily deep pools. Maybe the current right as it leads into the pool, that initial fast water, but in slower water, I tend to go with some other patterns. But by all means, when fish seem to be feeding and they're active, especially during mayfly or caddisfly hatches, I do not hesitate putting this one on in this color combination just because fish are looking for active insects at that time. And this CDC really gives them that proof of life that there's some movement going on. So don't hesitate to also fish these on the sides of the river or on the sides of the stream. Don't just immediately run to that pool. fish the edges and see what kind of luck you have with this fly. But by all means, try it out with your various fishing techniques that you're using already. If you're still into strike indicators, keep using them. If you have transitioned over to Euro nymphing, go with it. What about a dry dropper situation? Absolutely. As long as that dry fly will help to suspend this fly, then by all means try it out and you will have success with it. Because as I mentioned before, it's the perfect jig nymph, right? Well, thank you everybody for watching this fly tying tutorial. And before you click pause or stop or go to that next video, I'm not going to give you all my website and social media stuff yet. Instead, I talked about the notion of the perfect jig nymph. So in your mind, I'm putting this on you now, what defines that? If you have that perfect fly, will you share it down below in the comment section? And do not do what I know you're thinking right now. You're gonna take the easy way out and say, whichever fly catches the most fish. No, you can't do that. Come on, I wanna hear from all of you down below in the comment section. What is your perfect jig nymph? Now that you've answered that question, you can watch more videos like this at troutandfeather.com. If you get there, you can click on a section called nymphs, and there is a whole page dedicated to jig nymphs, including this perfect one, right? If you're into social media, you can find Trout and Feather on Facebook and on Instagram. And if you'd like to contact me, my email is found down below. It's tcammisa@gmail.com. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing all of you soon.